Everyone, thank you so much for joining me again today. It's been a little while since my last video again because I've gone a little over top and I've made a whole ton of samples of this technique and version of making a card. So stick around to the end. I will share with you my big bundle of samples that I have made and give you loads of ideas and inspiration so that you can take what you've got at home, work with it and make this really awesome, simple, effective card. So to get started, what I'm going to use today is some watercolor card because we're going to be using watercolors as our background for the technique. Now use whatever you've got in your stash, but I would say to use watercolor for this technique. We're going to be putting quite a bit of water on the card. We want it to have movement, so we don't want it to absorb straight into the card. So I do recommend you use watercolor card, something that is designated to be wet. So for mine, I'm using the Arteza Premium watercolor pad. This contains 32 sheets. It's 9 by 12 inches and it is 300 GSM. So it's very thick. I really, really like it. It's also cold press, if you know what that means. I don't really know. But you can see like there's a difference between, I think there's hot press and cold press. Lots of people really enjoy cold press, so if that's something you want to know. This is how much I've got left in my paper pad. When you buy this bundle, you get 2 in a pack. This is all I've got left in mine, and I have used it a ton. So what I do is I cut up my watercolor card into card fronts. So you can see here, I've got a nice little square. I do this so that I can put it on the front of my card and I save my watercolor card because it is expensive and I get the most out of it by doing that. Now what I did is I cut mine according to the size of my watercolor pad. So my watercolor pad was 9 by 12 inches. So I cut mine to 4.5 by 4.5 so that I could get the most out of my watercolor pad. What you're left with in the end is a square like this. Now don't throw it away. We can make another card out of this. What I like to do is I make all my own card bases and I cut them to fit either the stamp that I'm using or I cut it to fit the piece of cardstock I've got. So these are all the exact same size. So I'm just going to make a whole bunch of little notelet cards using all of these up so that I have no wastage and I get the most out of my cardstock as possible. So I was going to give you a whole breakdown of everything that we're going to use, which is why my screen slightly changed because I started going on about everything. But then I realized it was just a waste of time because I'm just going to tell you as we go why you need what you need or why I've chosen to use what I've chosen. So we're going to get cracking and get started on this fun technique. So I'm going to be using these watercolors today. These are gouaches. They're from Arteza. And they come in a tube, and what you do is you get an empty pan, like so, and you fill them up with your gouache and leave them to dry. And then you can use them like a watercolor. You get quite a lot in each tube, so what's worth doing is possibly going in with a friend on them, because they can get quite pricey. I mean, they're all beautiful colors, they're really pigmented, and they last a long time. So it might be worth going in with a friend or two and saying, let's buy this big set, and we'll each get like a pan. Or a pan and a half or something because I've got quite a lot here. I think you get 60 colors and you can fit, can't work it out, less than 60 on here. I'll link everything down below so you can go and check it out and you'll have all the details. But I easily filled all my trays up and still have about 3/4 of my tube left. So you could easily get away with doing 2 to 3 friends and just kind of all dividing it up, and then you've all got some of all the colors. So I love all these like kind of pastel colors, which you get in the big set. I love the metallics. You can see I've used them loads, but I mean, I've had this now for at least a year, I think, and I'm still going and I use them all the time. I love them. They're very pigmented, very bright, really nice. So I'll link them down below. I'll link the empty pans down below as well if you want to check them out. But any watercolors will do. So find your watercolors in your stash and get them out. You could use Distress Oxides and Distress Inks, which I did have a go with. I did not find them as effective or as good. When I do some color lifting later in the video, you'll see what I mean. It just does not pull the color out, and I'll show you some samples of the ones that I tried. So I prefer to use a watercolor, so either a gouache or a proper watercolor. That is what I prefer to use for this technique. It works the best. I did try using Distress Inks as well, and it didn't work as well. Okay, so to make this process simpler and for you to be able to see it a bit better, I've just taken out the colors I'm going to use. And what I like to do is batch making. So normally I would put 2 to 4 bits of my card front on my mat, so I could bulk make them and do this technique, and then kind of let them all dry all together, or heat set them to dry them. Now what's useful to have is some kind of mat to do this on. So a waterproof mat of some kind. This is the Altenew mixed media mat. I really like using this because it's made of silicone, I think, so my stuff doesn't move. So you can see, like, I can't push it anywhere. I have to actually pick it up to be able to move it. So I really like it for that fact that it doesn't shift around. It wipes clean every time. I've got a little bit of staining going on, but it doesn't affect anything. Dead easy to clean. When I wipe it as well, when I clean it when I'm done, because it's so sticky, it doesn't slide around my work surface, it just stays put. So I can really wipe it firmly and it doesn't go anywhere. So that's why I'm using this one today. I have been using it probably for all my crafting for the past sort of 6-7 months, and I have really loved it. It's also got grid lines and measurements on it, which is helpful, but I don't tend to use it for that. I use it for when I'm doing something messy. You could also use one of those kind of glossy baking sheets would work really well. Anything that you're not going to make a mess with on your surface would be good. I've got my paintbrush today. This is from AliExpress. I like it just because it's nice and big, easy to work with. I've got my spray bottle with just water in it, and then my old kitchen jar with some water for rinsing my brush. With the gouaches, to get them activated, it's just like using watercolor. You just want to put some water in each one. So sometimes I like to just spray it and get some water in there. And then you obviously just leave them to dry out when you're done. So I'm going to get them all moistened up. As soon as I apply the water, they're ready to go. I'm going to spray with quite a few sprays, enough to just kind of wet my surface of my watercolor cardstock. So I'm going to get my brush nice and wet, and I'm going to apply my first color. I'm going to go with the lightest color first, just so that I'm not making a big mess between using the dark ones and getting it kind of mixed in. So I'm just going to get that color on my brush, and I'm just going to literally kind of blob it on. I'm not going to create any kind of pattern. There's no rhyme or reason. Obviously these little blocks are going to kind of slip around a bit on me when I'm kind of blobbing on my ink, just because they're not in the tray. But obviously when they're in the tray, they're nice and easy to use. So I'm going to blob on some ink, some green, and then I'm going to do some blue. And I'm just going to kind of go up near the edge. There's no rhyme or reason as to where I'm going and why I'm going. I have tried different things every time just for fun. I want to make sure I'm going right up to that edge so I start to get some bleeding going on between the colors. And then I'm going to go in, this is probably one of my favorite colors, this kind of purpley maroon color. I really love it. And I'm just going to apply that in there as well. And it's really nice, like you get such a good pigment with these watercolors, these gouaches. I really love how it looks. Now I probably did put a bit too much water down when I sprayed it because I'm getting a lot of movement of my color already. And I do want to spray it a little bit more just to kind of add a bit more movement in there. I'm just going to kind of go for some of the edges as well and just add that purple in a bit more. No rhyme, no reason. Just getting that movement going. I'm going to spray it a little bit more to make those colors run a bit more. And if you tilt your card, now I did it without doing this, and I just didn't feel like it looked as natural and as free moving. So I'm just going to kind of move it, and then if you get your movement going on, you kind of get some droplets coming off, and then that is quite good because you can absorb that up and then it's less drying. So that one I'm going to leave to dry now, or I'll heat set it in a second probably so I can carry on with my video. Right, now I'm just going to take my microfiber cloth, just wipe that up so I can move this one over. Now again, as I said, I would do bulk making, so I would do all the same colors. But for the point of the video, I'm just going to share with you just making them like this. A bit more water in there. So again, I'm going to start with my lightest color. And I'll just get some of that color on my paintbrush. You can see the pigment just is so great and so vibrant. I'm going to use two colors here because when these merge, I'll get that third color. So you can always think about your primary school lessons on how to merge colors and things, and which colors complement each other and which ones give you poo brown, so you want to avoid those kind of colors. So I'm just going to add in some random blotches of yellow. If you get it on your hands, just wipe it off. If you get it on your card, don't worry too much, because you can just cover it up with your other color. I'm going to get this gorgeous, slightly brighter version of the last color we used. So it's that same kind of like maroony, purpley pink, but like a brighter version. So I'm going to come in with that now and just kind of spread it around. Now, I'm not a watercolor artist. I did it in high school, but I don't remember much from it, and literally I am just having fun, which is why I've got about 25 samples to share with you, because I just had fun with this. I love getting a bit messy and a bit inky, and this is such good fun, and you kind of feel like you're back in primary school. It is such good fun. I'm just going to add in a bit over here. So no rhyme, no reason, just applying it. I'm going to spray it to get a bit more movement going on. And this again is why it is really, really good to have watercolor cards, because it can take all this spraying and all this movement and all this ink. So that is why it is excellent to use proper watercolor card. There we go, so we've got some movement in there. I'm just going to set this aside. I'm going to clear my work surface. And then I will dry these and speed through the drying process so you don't have to hear the noise and see what I'm doing. Okay, so you want to make sure that your bits of card are very dry, because we're going to now start doodling on them. So we want them fully dry. Now when you get a bit of warping, you can just kind of bend it back. It's very thick card, so it's easy to work with. You can kind of just manipulate it and kind of straighten it out a bit, and you get it a lot more flat than it was. I had a bit of an oopsie here because I had this puddle here, which I was trying to dry naturally, so it didn't look like I dried it off with my cloth. However, I wasn't careful enough when I shifted it over, so I got those kind of blotches there. Now you could apply more water and kind of soften those out, which I'll probably do with a smaller brush. I'm going to take this little one here, and I'm just going to lightly wet it, and I'm just going to see if I can soften those a little bit without moving that color too much. I just want to soften them a bit. And again, it's just starting to pick up my color, so I'm going to stop there so I don't ruin that too much. We're going to add another technique. Right, so they're nice and dry, and I forgot that we need to do our little stenciling first. So I'm going to take my Alina's stencil. I'm going to use the dots on this one here, and all we're going to do is, if you've got another microfiber cloth, use another one, otherwise use the same one. It's not going to matter too much, and we're just going to get it nice and damp. So if you did this in the sink, that would probably be better, and you want it damp, not saturated, damp. So I'm just going to get it so that, you know, if I rub it on my skin, I can feel it's wet, but it's not leaving a residue. That's what you're looking for when you do this. Otherwise, you're going to have too much wet. It's going to take away too much color. Now, when I did this technique and I used the distress inks, it just didn't lift as quickly or as easily or as nicely. All we're going to do, because it's a watercolor card, watercolor paper, watercolor paint, we're just going to very lightly kind of do something like that. So all I've done is just very gently stuck my cloth down, twisted really quick, and you can see you can already get that lift going on. So we're just lifting the color. So you can do as much or as little as you like. I like the kind of subtle lift in the background, so I'm just going to kind of do a few twists here and there, and if you start to find it gets dirty, change it over, use a different part of your cloth if you've got a nice damp cloth. Otherwise you will transfer the color a little bit. So all I'm doing is just twisting a bit, and you can see I'm getting that lovely color lift in the background. And you can do it as dark, I guess as light or as not light as you like. So you can go as heavy-handed or not, and you will get a different effect. So I could go, I'll do it up here in the corner, quite heavy-handed, and do it quite a few times, and I can lift almost all the color off. And it just gives you this beautiful little extra bit of character to the back of your background. So I'm going to leave that one like that with some subtle spots. I'm going to go a bit heavier on my next one. So on this bright one, I'm going to use my homemade flower stencil. This is using one of Alina's dies from her shop, and I just cut my own stencil out of some acetate. And I'm going to go a bit heavier handed on this one. So I'm going to rub a bit more. And because we've got the watercolor card, we're not going to have the, is it called pulling, I think, when the paper kind of bubbles up? You're not going to have that because we're using an actual watercolor card. So I'm going to give a little twist and a little rub. And I don't want this image across the whole background. I kind of want it to just be like a little hint of it. So because my stencil is clear, you can already see that gorgeous effect going on. It's a really fun, really simple, quick, easy way to add a bit more character to the background, and I love it. Absolutely love it. So I'm going to go in and add some more up here. And do as much or as little as you like. And again, I'm going to shift my cloth a little bit so I've not got too much transfer of color going on. And I'm not really pressing down. I am literally just rubbing. So that is the most beautiful, cool technique. I love this technique. So now that we've done that, this doesn't actually make your cardstock really wet anymore. It's still very, very dry. So I'm gonna now come in and doodle. I've got these two pens from Arteza. I've been playing around with them. This is a fine liner sort of felt tip nib on this one. And then this one is a roller ballpoint pen. I am in love with these pens. I got a pack of 20 of them from Arteza. They're waterproof and fade resistant and acid free. They, for whatever's in them is really good. So I tend to make a mess. If the ink is still wet, I will drag it, and I always have ink along there on my hands whenever I'm writing or doing anything. This seems to dry instantly, and it could be a combination of using the watercolor card with them, but I have not had any smudging in any of my projects. So if you're looking for a really good, really black pen, these are excellent. They're really, really good. So next, what we're going to do is we are going to doodle. So all we're literally going to do is go back to primary school and doodle. I want to create an edge and a border around my card. I'm going to stamp with black ink. So I want to like pull it together by using black ink on the edge. Do whatever you want. You'll see all my examples at the end of all the different things I've done. And it doesn't need to be perfect. The more imperfect it looks, the better the card looks. So I am literally just going to doodle around my cards. So I think for this one, I am just going to draw some lines. We'll go with like a double line effect. I'm just going corner to corner. And you can see this pen is beautiful. It is so dark and so black and so smooth. I'm really happy with it. And again, like the more imperfect it looks, the better the card kind of seems to come together. And normally I'm a very straight line person. This is why I stamp and I don't draw, because I can't draw. I can't even make a straight line or a straight circle. So this is quite fun because it seems to work. We'll just add some dots on there to add some more interest. Some random dots. Do whatever you like. Any kind of doodling. I am that kind of person that I doodle the same thing every single time I doodle because I can't draw anything. I don't know how to draw. I'm utterly rubbish at circles and everything. So it's just a really fun technique where you can just kind of have a play and you can be utterly crap at art, but it still looks really good. And I like things to be balanced, and I'm trying my hardest to do everything unbalanced. The fact that my doodling is just wonky, but it really seems to pull the card together. So this is where you can just have fun and just feel like you're back in school again. So just drawing random dots everywhere. Please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed already. Thank you for all your comments. I read every single comment. I've got a bit behind with the kids going back to school, some things going on in life, and it's taking me a bit of time to kind of reply to you or like your comment, but I do read every single comment that you put on my channel. I absolutely love seeing what you guys write to me. I love when you leave me a little message. So please do like and subscribe. There's apparently a bell button as well, and if you hit the bell button, then you get notified of when my videos go up. So that's always dead handy as well. I've had a few people saying they have no idea that I'd made another video. So if you hit the bell button, then that shows up for you really nicely. Now all I've done is just draw lines, and my lines are wonky and horrible, But it works, doesn't it? It kind of works. So there's my doodling that I've done on those. Now we're gonna pick our stamps to use. Now what I would recommend is a stamp that is more of an outline than a solid image, just so you don't get too much black going on. I've got these two that I bought from Visible Image ages ago, like 2 years ago, and I haven't even used them yet. And I love them. And these are very mixed media stamps. They do a huge range of very mixed media. So I am going to use this one probably on that card, and I'll take a butterfly image. I'll go with the smaller butterfly image, and I'll use that one on that card. I'll link Visible Image down below for you. They are I believe a small family run business, and they do really cool stamps. Now if you've got a stamp platform, please use it. It's going to make life so much easier. If you have not got a stamp platform, make sure your ink pad is good and juicy. When you are working with watercolor card, you're going to really struggle with getting a nice clear image without using a stamp platform, because it is so textured, and I think it's called toothy. You don't get a clear image the first stamp. So I'll share with you what I mean, because I'll do one stamp and then you'll see the difference between doing 1, 2, and 3 worth of stamping. You just get a nice solid clear image the more you stamp. So I'm going to put my butterfly there, push down. I'm going to use my magnet so I don't get that going on. And if you can see, I'm carefully putting my butterfly right where my little blotchy went. So I'm going to put some magnets down just to hold that card in place. I'm going to take my VersaFine Onyx Black, which is my favorite black ink, and we're just going to ink up the butterfly. Now I did re-ink my ink pad yesterday, so it's very juicy. So that's the first impression. Now watch how much better it gets when you go for a second one. It gets so much darker and so much clearer. You get this beautiful crisp image, so really happy with that. We'll add our sentiment in just a minute. I'm going to take my damp rag and I'm just going to clean that stamp off before I remove it. And it's just water and my microfiber cloth, and it just comes straight off, and I'm ready to go with my next one. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this one in. And the paper's curling a bit, so I'm just going to bend it back a bit so I don't get it popping up. If it pops up too much, if you don't have enough magnets or you can't put loads of magnets on, you might end up smudging your image when you go to put it down. So I'm going to go with my flower just off to the side here, so I've got space for a sentiment. I'll close my lid to pick it up. And this one's so squeaky as well. It really bugs me. But it is so, like, look how I can bend it. It's really bendy, which is what makes me a bit nervous about breaking it when I use it. But it is, I really like that it's got that edge there that you can line things up against. So I'm just going to give that a firm press down. And that's our first image. So you can see the middle's not very clear. The lines are there, but it's not as defined. This is where having a stamp platform is really helpful. And I do recommend having one if you really want to do lots of card making. It makes it really easy for bulk card making as well. So I know that when all my cards are the same size, I could do a whole ton of these flower ones and just keep putting them in and stamping. And I know that my stamp is in exactly the right position every single time. And you can see how dark this image is getting again. Like, look at that. Isn't that stunning? It is so gorgeous. So I'm going to now add the sentiment on. You could do the sentiment at the same time as your stamping, but if you want to change up what your sentiments are, then you'll do all your stamping and then you can kind of put in different ones. I'm going to go with Happy Birthday on this one. And this stamp set is from Craftstash, so I'll put that link down below for you. I'm going to just stick Happy Birthday on there. Pick it up on my stamp. And you can see there's the first generation, and it's just not very dark. We're going to go in for a second one, and it's getting much better. So this is why, yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So there's our first card panel. I love how that looks. So I decided to go with the same stamp set and go with Thank You for All You Do as my sentiment. I'm going to stick that on there. And these are photopolymer stamps as well. Now if you can see, I've got ink there, and because it's not a stamping block, it's a stamp platform, I'm not going to get that ink transferring onto my image, which is so nice because I am terrible and messy when I stamp sometimes. So there's our finished card front for this one. So we've got our 2 card fronts. This one I love as is. I think the flowers are beautiful, the texture is all there. This one I'm going to add a little bit more texture to. Now I've got this background stamp from Alina's shop on AliExpress. It's just a general background stamp. It's got some like blurred writing in it. That's what I'm going to use today. I've also got stamps like this one from Tim Holtz, which would be really good to use. Just that kind of mixed background, any kind of words, sort of mixed media, distressed sort of image would work really well. I want it to be really subtle, so I could use a really light purple, a really light blue, a really light green. It's worth testing out before you do it, because I did do it with too dark of an ink the first time I did it, and it totally took away from the whole entire image because all you could see was this print on it. So I'm going to use, this is the lightest ink I've got. This is from My Favorite Things, and this one is Grout Grey. So it is the lightest color of ink that I own. It's very, very, very light. It might be too light. We'll have a go. We can always add a darker ink if it doesn't work. Now I've left this on the sheet that it came with, pulled off the other sheet, and I'm just leaving it like that because I just want a subtle impression in the background. I don't want a full image. I don't want it crystal clear. I just want that texture from the stamp. So all I'm going to do is just take it, put it face down, and just rub. I just want the texture from the stamp. I don't want anything else. I just want that subtle hint. So there you go. Can you see that subtle image in the background? That's all I wanted. Just something really light to add a little bit more texture. And obviously it stands out a bit more on those spots where we took away that watercolor ink. So I'm going to come in with my card bases now. Now do be mindful, we've used a pigment ink on these, so they will smudge just slightly, so be very mindful that they might still be a bit wet. You could heat set them. I'm going to remove my mat, just because sometimes, I'll show you what I mean before I remove it. So because it's silicone, it's got that kind of sticky texture to it. When you place it upside down, for whatever reason, if I do it on normal paper or my backdrop here, it's fine. But when I put it onto my mat, it lifts the color. So I'm getting rid of the mat because it will, I know it will take my pigment ink and kind of pull it, and then when I put my card down, it might put it back onto my card. So I've got my card bases. They are 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. This is from Alina Craft, my black cardstock. I have got my white cardstock, which is also from Alina Craft. I believe this is 300 GSM, this is 280. These are going to be our inserts on the inside. And all we're going to do is literally just stick them on the top and stick it in the inside. So those are my 2 cards finished, and I love them. I love the result. I love the texture to them, the very mixed media feel to them, and I just think they're a brilliant card. They are 1 layer, so they'll be great to post internationally if you got to post internationally. They're fun, and you can see the 2 different styles you can kind of go for. You can go for a bright one with 2 colors that makes your 3rd color. You can go for a more subtle one with 3 colors. It is such a fun, versatile technique. So let me share with you my other cards. Firstly, remember how I talked about distress oxides? So this is using distress oxides, and I had to really rub to lift that color. So you can start to see the pulling, is that what it's called? Where it's starting to bubble up, and you can feel that bubble up effect. This is using distress oxides instead of a watercolor. I really, really struggled to lift the color off these. I really had to rub quite firm, and it was starting to damage the paper. Whereas this, I barely even touched it and the color came straight up. So you can use oxides, you can use distress ink, you do need to use watercolor card, and you will have to put in a bit more effort to get that color to come off. Now, don't forget about your scraps. You can take them and do the same technique on them. I started this one, I did my little doodles. I can put a thank you stamp right across the front there. Something like that, and that would finish a little notelet really nicely. And what I'll do is I will make them up. I will then cut my card base to fit this size here, which I know is a nice even number because I did all my cards as 4.5 by 4.5. And my original cardstock was 9 by 12. So I have now got 3 by 4.5 little squares, rectangles. So I can now go ahead and make little notelets and cut all my cardstock to fit, and just do the exact same thing I did on these ones, where I'll cut a piece for the middle and use the black cardstock up. And funnily enough, this is my scrap left over from doing my card bases. And if we just take a look, that will actually probably fit quite nicely on there, and I could just trim it down slightly and make it fit and make it work. So use your scraps, don't forget about those. They make really cute, really quick, easy little notelets. Now here are the rest of my samples. I've got several to share with you. So again, that's the same kind of technique with that little butterfly, and I've done the color lifting. I went a bit heavier on the color of these ones. I used the tree kind of grain background for this and a bigger stamp on that one, and I doodled some flowers, and my flowers are so crap. But it works with this. Again, I did some more doodling and did a similar effect, went really light with my background. And this one I added in some textured stamps, which these ones came with that stamp set there. Did more doodling. There's my next one. Did a really, really light watercolor wash on this one, really light. And you can see my stenciling, but it's very faint in the background. There's another one. I just love doing my doodled lines. It looks really good. This stamp is a Finnabar stamp, which is this one here, and that's where that big butterflies come from, and it's got all these circles in there. I bought this a long time ago. It's by Prima, so I have no idea if it's still available or not. There's another one. That one is dead similar to the one we did. More circles. This one was using one of my stamps that I picked up recently from Craftstash. Remember in one of my last videos, turn them around the right way. In one of my last videos I got these stamps here, and so I used that one for that card. And I used the Just Because that came with it. So that worked out really well. There's another one. Did 2 colors there, darker colors. This is using the metallic range of gouache. It just gives a very, very subtle sheen to it. Again, you can see Alina's stamp in the background of that one, because there wasn't too much going on here, so I added the extra bit of texture in the background. That was with a slightly darker ink. This is the Distress Oxides. So you can see with the Distress Oxides, I was really struggling to lift any of that color. You can't even tell I've used a stencil on this, and I did use a stencil, and this is 2 different colors of ink as well. They ran so much that they kind of blended together, and I couldn't lift any color from them. So the Distress Oxides do work, you just have to work really hard with them. This is more of the metallic gouaches, and again I went very, very light with my stencil. This is using the Distress Oxides again. This is the Seedless Preserves and the lipstick one, I believe. And then that one. So those are all my cards that I have made with this technique. I spent only a couple hours doing it. Like I said, I put all my watercolor card down and I did bulk making. And I had loads of fun, and now I've got all these great cards ready to go, and they stack and store really nicely because they're all 1-layer cards. So it's a great way to get a whole bunch of bulk cards made really quick and really easy. So thank you so much for joining me today. Please do like and subscribe and drop me a comment. I love reading your comments and I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me today. Happy crafting. Bye.